Welcome to Manifested Publishers.
Hello and welcome to the Manifested e-learning forum. The subject is business studies. We are on the topic production. During the last lesson, we learnt about utility. We defined utility as the ability of a product to satisfy a human want. A human want, the ability of a good or service to satisfy a human want is known as utility. And if you are keen enough learners during that lesson, you must have realized that form utility, which is one of the four types of utility that we mentioned, the other ones being time utility, possession utility, and place, the form utility is the most basic usefulness of a good. All right? It's the most basic. Goods cannot satisfy human wants if they are not in the appropriate physical state. And therefore, time utility, possession utility, and place utility are only supportive of form utility. And learners, you must have realized also that even though utility refers to the usefulness of goods and services, the various types of utility are more applicable to goods than to services. And the reason being that, it is difficult to describe the usefulness of services in terms of their physical state. In terms of their physical state, in terms of ownership or even physical location. Learners, after all, services have no physical form. They are not transferable. They cannot be moved from one physical location to the other. So, utility that we've been talking about is mainly applicable to goods than services. So, by the end of that lesson, I gave you an assignment which I hope you have done. In today's lesson, we are going to study types of production. 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 There are two main types of production. Okay, learners, we may classify production processes into two types. All right, okay, into two types. And these types are based on the intention of creating the good or providing the services. The types of production are mainly classified based on the intention of creating the goods or provision of the services. And the two main types of production are direct production. There are two types of production, namely, one, direct production, and two, indirect production. In this lesson, we will focus our attention on direct production. Then in the next lesson, we'll study indirect production. So we have one, direct Direct production. Direct production. What is direct production? Direct production is the production or refers to the process where goods and services are produced for one's own use. Direct production refers to the process where production of goods or services is done for one's own use. For one's own use. When you engage in production of goods or services solely for your own use, then we say that is direct production, and this kind of production is also known as subsistence production. It is also called subsistence production, since what is produced is sufficient for one's survival, subsistence. All right? This type of production was very common in the past, though it is still practiced in many developing countries. This was an ancient practice. Examples of form of production are like growing crops. With that we have many homes doing, keeping poultry, and we in African setup we had people doing making pots and for own use. Okay, people would make even pots to for the purpose of cooking in the home for their own use. That is direct production. Now we will now move to describe the features or characteristics of direct production. Characteristics of direct production. Characteristics of direct production, which we've said is also known as subsistence production. Subsistence production. So we want to put down the features or characteristics of direct production. The first obvious characteristic is that the goods or services produced are mainly for one's own use. The goods and services produced are mainly for one's own use. For one's own use. They are produced for one's own consumption and not for sale. Then number two, the second feature is that it is usually carried out in small amounts, or we can say on small scale. It is usually carried out or done on small scale. On small scale. If you are producing for, say, a family of 10, if you are planting crops for a family of 10 or a family of 2, then that is in small quantities. Production is done in small quantities. It is usually done on small scale. Then the third feature or characteristic is that the methods used for production are usually simple. The methods used for production are usually simple. Here you don't find involvement of machines or mechanization of the production processes. No, the methods are always simple when producing goods or services. Under this category, we are referring to as direct production. Okay, so the quality of goods and services are also sometimes very low, because when you are producing goods or services manually, then there will be compromise on the quality of goods that are produced. Then number 4, the fourth characteristic is that it involves the production of a variety of goods and services at the same time. It involves the variety of production of goods and services at the same time. Under this method, like in rural homes, you find that on a 1 acre farm, production of maize is done. There is beans, we have vegetables, there are cows and goats and poultry. So direct production involves the production of variety of goods. Involves the production of variety of goods at the same time. The other way involves the production of variety of goods and services at the same time. Number 5, the fifth characteristic of direct production is that the quantities produced are relatively low. The quantities produced are relatively low. The quantities produced are relatively low for obvious reasons, because when you are doing using manual methods to produce, then you can only do much. You cannot do very much. You can only do to a certain point, as opposed to where there is involvement of machines in production. So if you are producing under this method, then the volume of the quantities that are produced will be relatively low. Then lastly, learners, there is usually no extra goods or services produced. All right, there is no extra goods or services produced. There is usually no extra goods or services or what we call surplus. Surplus produced. Because it's meant for subsistence, it's made for consumption, then there is no motivation to produce many goods because you only produce what you require for consumption. So these are 6 characteristics of direct production. I want you to go through the video one more time, then you answer this question. Revision. Question 1, what is production? Question 2, outline 6 characteristics of direct production. When answering these questions, please ensure that you do not refer directly from your exercise book. Try and answer the 2 questions from your memory. Test your recall. Thank you for choosing to study with us. In our next lesson, we are going to discuss the indirect production. For now, I'll say bye-bye.